Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Well, it's October, so let's make a spooky spiral. To spiral the shirt, I have it turned inside out, and I actually like to spiral shirts with the front of the shirt against the table, so the back of the shirt is what's facing up. I'm going to use a washable marker and make a mark where I'd like for the center of my spiral to be. I normally like to put the center of the spiral just about even with the armpits of the shirt or just a little bit below. I'm going to use a pair of locking tweezers which are coated with a plastic coating, place those on the mark that I made, lock them down, then over the top of my pair of locking tweezers I am going to use a microwave splatter guard. This one has a hole in the center and I'm putting the flat part of the splatter guard against the shirt. As I turn my locking tweezers, the shirt will spiral and I'm going to use my other hand to make additional folds in the shirt. Having the flat part of the microwavable splatter guard over the top and up against the fabric will help to keep most of those folds just about the same height. And then the reason why I put the front part of the shirt facing the table is because whenever I do a spiral, one side is always cleaner or prettier than the other side. My folds are just a little bit nicer. And usually that's the side that's against the table. So I want the front part of my shirt, those folds to be the nicer folds, and that's where I'm going to apply the dye. Then I've had lots of people suggest to me that I use tape to do my spirals with instead of holding them in place with some rubber bands. So I did that on one shirt not too long ago and it worked really well. So I'm going to try that again. I had a couple of starts before I could actually get it to work properly, but I'm taking a piece of tape and taping it to my splatter guard, and then I'm going to wrap the tape around the outside of the shirt. The first time I did this, I took my splatter guard off and the tape came undone. It just was a mess. So I took the tape off the shirt and tried it a second time. The second time it worked a little bit better, but I don't know if I need to get maybe a different kind of tape or perhaps a wider roll of tape. I don't know, I'm going to mess with this a little bit. So the tape is holding the spiral in place, but it's not sturdy enough that I can just pick up this shirt and move it around. So what I'm going to do is grab a couple of metal shelf things that I have. I'm going to take the shirt and slide it to the edge of the table onto one of these shelves so I don't actually have to pick it up. Then to turn it over, I'm going to place another shelf on top and just flip the shirt over. I'm going to leave this shirt on this shelf while I apply the dye. One of the first things I'm going to do is use a washable marker and divide my shirt into 4 sections. And I'm going to go straight through the middle of the spiral. That way, all of the colors are going to originate from the same place at the center of the spiral. When I think of Halloween, I think of colors like lime green, purple, orange, black. So those are the colors I'm going to use on this spiral. I've taken the shelf with the shirt on top and placed it down inside of a plastic container. And then I'm going to use another washable marker that's a little bit more of a fine tip marker and draw some more lines on the shirt. I'm going to divide each one of the sections into smaller areas. It's a little bit hard to see the vision right now, but when I start applying the dye, you're going to understand better what I'm doing. I'm making kind of a 90-degree angle inside each one of those little sections. That's going to be one dye color. And then the small area, which is close to the curve, is going to be another color. Like I said, it'll make more sense when I begin to apply the dye. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to apply Raven Black from Dharma Trading Company right along the orange lines that I initially drew on the shirt. Because the colors that I'm using don't necessarily play well together, they're all secondary colors. And when you mix two secondary colors together, you normally end up with some version of brown. Well, I don't want just a big brown blob of color on my shirt. So I'm going to separate these colors with black. I'm trying to put a fairly thin line of black. I'm going to add more black on the shirt, so this won't be the only black areas that I have on the shirt, but I want to leave myself some space for some of the other colors. So in this one area, I want to extend black on over. What I'm going to do is in my 90-degree space, I'm going to place black in that area, in just this one section. I'm using a stainless steel lab spoon to apply the dye, and these lab spoons are really great because the dye doesn't tend to stick to these quite as bad as it does plastic. I usually end up with some form of static electricity on my plastic spoons, and the dye sticks to it really bad. So I like these stainless steel lab spoons. They come in a variety of sizes. Some of them have spatulas on the end. Some of them have smaller or larger spoons on the other end of the spoon. It works really well. Okay, so you kind of see the shape that I'm going for. I'm going to put another color in that white space right outside of the big black area that I made. But on the other sections, I am going to use black to define that smaller area right at the edge of the shirt. On this last area, instead of putting black around the edge or defining that area, I'm going to fill this area in with black. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to put black and orange in this area. Then in the other two sections across from each other, I'm going to use the lime green and purple together. Okay, in the two sections across from each other where I added the black, I'm going to add in the orange. And the orange that I'm using today is Dusty Orange from Pro Chemical and Dye. Dusty Orange is a really cool color. It's got a lot of color variation and it does have some cool color splits. I don't know if they'll show up on this shirt, but if it's used in a pretty large area, it does show up and they're really pretty. Next, in the two remaining sections of the shirt, in the smaller section close to the edge of the shirt, I'm going to add Lime Twist from Custom Colors. And then I'm going to add that in the 90-degree angle area across in the last section. The dye pattern is a little bit difficult to describe, but I think it's a lot easier to understand once you see it on the shirt. Then the last color I'm going to use on the shirt is Royal Purple from Die Spin. To make it a little bit easier to apply the dye, I didn't have any kind of an ice barrier on the shirt when I was applying the dye. So now I'm going to make myself an ice barrier using some silicone cake molds. I'm going to attach them together, then wrap them around the shirt, and then to hold them in place, I'm going to use one wooden clothespin. I'm not quite sure how the shirt's going to turn out, but I do think that the dye pattern on the shirt looks really cool. The colors are kind of giving me 1970s vibes. I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top of the dye, and then I'm going to add on some ice. After all the ice was on the shirt, I left it alone and allowed the ice to melt. Once most of the ice melted, I came back and kind of topped it off with a little bit more ice. Then after all the ice melted, I left the shirt alone and allowed it to process. For about the last 12 hours of processing, I just took a container lid, laid it on top of the ice barrier, and placed this container outside. It wasn't sealed, but the container lid laying on top kept the sun and the wind off of the shirt. So all total, I left the shirt for probably about 48 hours before I began rinsing it. And to rinse it, I took it to my utility sink and I started rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. As you can see, some of the dusty orange didn't totally dissolve. That's because it has a lot of yellow in it. And of course, I'm sure you're well aware that when you use yellow with ice dyeing, you get quite a bit of residue left on top. After rinsing in cold for a while to rinse out the soda ash, I took the tape away from the edge of the shirt. Then I went ahead and warmed my water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I went ahead and soaked the shirt in some really hot water. So to do that, I added some really hot water to my utility sink, added some Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside, and just allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I put the shirt along with some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so I've washed, dried, and ironed the shirt, and let's see what our spooky spiral looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one looks pretty cool. So the black that I used is called a Raven, and it does have a lot of color splits in it, so it's not like a super duper dark pure black, because if you look at it, it kind of has some brownish, red, a little bit of purple hues to the black. But I think that's cool. I think it kind of adds to the design of the shirt. Also, the lime twist, which was the Custom Colors lime color, when it split out, it kind of ended up more of a yellowish green than like a green. But I think that looks good with the Halloween spooky spiral. As far as the orange goes, I didn't really expect to see a whole bunch of color splits in this one because I wasn't using it in a really large area. But I do have, quite a bit of color variation and a few like little yellow hints in those orange areas. As far as the design goes and how I applied the dye to the shirt, when you look at, let's just start with, say, the orange spiral part. When you see where the orange starts to spiral from the center of the shirt, as it comes out, the orange area is split on either side and you have a black area going right through the middle. So that black area is that little black portion that I put toward the edge of the shirt. And then each one of the colors does that spirals or begins in the center of the shirt. So you see that with the lime twist, it kind of splits and you have the purple there. And then the purple splits and you have the lime there. So I think it's kind of a fun design to do. I don't know that it's quite as easy to see this design on this shirt since I put as much black as I did, but if I wouldn't have put the black, I would have ended up with, say, that purple and lime blending together, and it just wouldn't have been very pretty. So it's not super spooky, but I definitely think it gives off Halloween vibes, and I think it looks really fun. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it, and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.